Thank you, Aburu. Welcome, Mr. Sado.
Thank you.
So there were these two rallies, one in Nairobi, the other in Nakuru. In your view, were they necessary?
Thanks, Mutegi. It depends on where you sit, huh? Whether
I don't know where you sit.
I don't know whether they were necessary. I think one for the Afraha rally, it was a combination of factors. You have those we have come to call the Ocampo Six, who have gone through The Hague, different stages, and their cases were dropped at different stages. I think for them, while these were tormenting personal experiences, you had this process start off on a very high political note right from 2010, and has been sustained that way on a political note through the election, through the campaign with the AU, amongst other things, and so as they come to this point where we have a mistrial for the deputy president, and also the president's case not going through, they're definitely going to come back and do a celebration or a Thanksgiving in the same political way that this process has gone through. So I think for them, looking at the trajectory right from the start, I think for them it was almost a given that they'd have to come back and have this close or celebration, as they've called it. For the rally for CODE, they definitely are looking at a very critical issue, that when these celebrations were announced, they felt no, the victims have been forgotten at this stage or are not being talked about, and hence they convened this counter rally to focus on what's going to happen to the victims, asking what's going to happen to the victims. So I think for them also, really, it was a necessary reaction just to ensure that...
It was a reaction.
Yeah, because...
It wasn't planned anyway. They wouldn't have done there. Even Nakuru was not there, they wouldn't have done any.
Likely, because this came after the Afraha rally was announced.
When you say the victims were not considered, I thought the Minister for Devolution, Mwangi Kinjuri, when he was in Nakuru, I saw him parading some people who claimed they were representatives of the victims.
Yeah, I mean, what I said was that CODE did the rally because, in their considered opinion, the Afraha rally was being convened without the thought of the victims. But both rallies paraded victims, if you saw. The Afraha rally actually had, I think the chair of the IDPs was there, and 2 or 3 or 4 other people. Yeah. But also the CODE rally had a number of victims who had come out and said that they were inadequately compensated. And the Afraha rally had victims who said they were adequately compensated. But I think both rallies had a similar call towards the full realization of the full compensation of victims. I think that was recognized in both rallies.
There was this picture which was circulating in the social media. I don't know whether you saw it. A person who had some injuries or some ailment, whichever, as we said, depends on where you are sitting. He was paraded there by Senator Orango and as one of the victims, and they said that he sustained burns. And some people are arguing, no, these are not burns, it's an illness. What is your take on that?
I saw that. I saw that on social media. In fact, on 1 or 2 of the groups I'm in, that was posted. Ndege's story is a story we've seen since 2008,
yeah.
And it's become one of those stories that is like the poster of post-election violence. Now, why 8 years later, new stories are coming up about him not being a real victim, him having a skin disease. In fact, one of the posts I saw was that his son actually burnt his family. When some of these things are coming up 8 years later, it begs the question of what really is the motive. I think at the end of the day, even if you don't focus on Ndege,
they are victims.
There's certain facts.
Yeah,
post-election violence happened. People died. People lost property. People lost their livelihoods. People were violated. They were definitely victims. So taking 1 man's story and shredding it now into pieces 8 years later does not change the fact that they were victims.
But the point is, the people are making, James Orengo was trying to tell a lie. It's true, Dege's family was eliminated. Somebody said he was there. In fact, there were journalists there. And Dege was not in the house that time when the family was eliminated. So he couldn't have been banned there.
Yeah, and if it emerges that yes, Ndege's family were victims of PEV, but if it emerges that he probably was not there, and that his skin ailment or whatever, or that it's a skin ailment, if that does come out as the truth, then you'll have to look at it from 2 points. One is that him as an individual, if he has been using his skin ailment to buy sympathy, that would be wrong if that's the case. But secondly, whether he has a skin ailment or not, he lost his family, and so you must look at that, and he needs support because of that. If the skin ailment is now being used for, or has been used in the past for this, that would really be wrong if that is the case.
There are people who feel that both parties, both groups are using the victims for political benefit. That Uhuru and the president used the case against in the ICC to get elected because they were victims, and they blame Raila for that. And even now they continue blaming Raila for them. After that, now they want to make political capital out of it. And the same thing, CORD is also doing the same. They want to make political capital, which is not, it's immoral. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely is immoral for anyone to use this for political gain. But we must take this in the context of where our country is. We're extremely divided. The post-election violence was an extremely politically dividing issue, and it's unfortunate that we've allowed the politicians to run away with the agenda and sometimes use it for political gain. My hope is that the unintended, or hopefully the intended consequence of this focus on victims could result in retribution for them, and a full and complete restorative justice for them. But yes, this has been a political issue right from the start, and it will be difficult to get it out of our political psyche because of the nature of the violence that was triggered by the elections.
I don't know whether you read the Sunday Nation yesterday, but there was an article by one commentator who was advising the former Prime Minister that he lost his team. In fact, he went to the polling that was done before the election last, that he should never have mentioned, associated himself with the ICC because he was being blamed for it. Now he's you know, when Ruto was set free, he congratulated him, then went to France and talked a very different story. Now, somebody was advising him, but if I were him, if I was his advisor, I would tell him to keep off the ICC matter. I don't know if you read that article.
I think I read it.
Yes.
If you look at the key political leaders in this country, they many times they follow, or they make utterances that they feel are in tune with what the bulk of their supporters are feeling, and so how the posturing has been around this issue of the victims, especially in the last few days, is definitely a reflection of where a lot of these key political leaders feel that their key constituencies, in terms of the people who support them, have staked their claim. So I wouldn't blame Ruto, or I wouldn't blame Raila for some of the positions they're taking. Since we have reduced this into a political contest, they definitely will have to make utterances that are in line with what the positions they've taken in the past. I think they have to maintain some consistency, and they have to communicate to their key supporters that they still maintain certain positions when it comes to this issue of ICC and of victims. So it was definitely expected that while the former Prime Minister would congratulate Ruto, who was in his party, for how this has come out, he must then thereafter come out and speak for or on behalf of victims, which has been a position of his party.
Both the President and the Prime and their deputy have consistently said, never again will Kenyans have to die because of political differences or political disputes. When you look at the country right now, and we are going to 2017 for another election, you think that will be the case?
In fact, my biggest worry with regard to the next elections would be conflict within the counties with regard to the heightened contestation we shall have in the counties. But let's come back to this. The president has, if you look at how, for example, he has taken on the issue of corruption, he's made some extremely decisive moves. Some have criticized, but many can agree that he has actually come out very strong in the pronouncements he has made. We in a long time have not had strong pronouncements coming from the top around issues of corruption. In some of the policy moves that he has made, and for him again to come out in public on national TV with such a strong pronouncement on the fact that never again will we have a political contest being fought or being won with the shedding of blood. That came out very strongly.
Yeah.
I want to take him with the seriousness that I think I've seen with what he's done in the last few months on, say, an issue like corruption. You realize that the whole rally at Afraha, they were very careful about getting into politics. One or two waded in, but they're very careful about getting into politics. And for me, that was a response to what the public had already begun saying, or the discourse that had been taking place in the country the week before. But the fact that every key political figure, led by the president, including some people who have been quite abrasive in their speech, have come out and said no shedding of blood. We have the clips, and as Kenyans we must hold them to account. So it is my considered view that we have a bit of time before the next election for even the necessary or the relevant agencies to be strengthened to deal with this issue of incitement in politics, incitement towards elections, and it was a broad address to all politicians across the divide. And if then the whip is cracked on those who go against this, I think this shall be good for the country, because it has come from the top, and we now have to wait to see how this will be implemented. But I hope all politicians took heed of that.
But we are going to an election with, as you said, very divided, heated environment. There are certain demands that are being made. For instance, the Chief Justice, the outgoing Chief Justice, he is arguing for, was calling for some dialogue of some kind. Some people are asking for some APPG. There are calls about reconstituting the Electoral Commission. But the Jubilee government doesn't seem to be interested in any of this. They think they're in power. They think the Electoral Commission is okay, fine. That call for, or that claim that never again doesn't seem to be that it will work with that kind of environment.
I think there's a lot happening that doesn't get reported. I think for example, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament is really doing a lot of work behind the scenes with regard to especially reviewing of laws, just aligning our laws afresh to the new electoral, or rather to the next election, looking at what didn't work for us in 2013, and not just the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, literally everyone involved in the electoral process, the IBC, the judiciary, and amongst other agencies, have spent a lot of time in the last couple of years just looking at that review of laws. I think everyone has a view with regard to what needs to be done before the next elections. I think there's work being done, even within civil society and within government, within parliament. There's a lot that is being done. What should be made public is what this discourse is about. This material may be available just amongst those who are working on it, but I think it's high time that the public was able to begin to engage on some of these things that are being discussed behind the scenes, so that it is clear that there is work that is being done. In terms of the whole IPPG issue or politicians coming together, I think we've seen in the past that our politicians at the end of the day may be able to come together and agree within that, even if it's within that parliamentary framework. I don't rule out the fact that our parliamentarians could be able to come together and have an agreement where there'll be no stalemate, because I think even the government would not want us to proceed to an election with a stalemate where you don't agree on the referee. So I'm sure there'll be a discussion around that will take place.
You seem to be very positive about these things, but I may not be able to agree with you. Yes. Because if, for instance, you see the way the Electoral Commission conducted the registration of voters, first of all, they were complaining about lack of money, which the Parliament should give. There wasn't much civic education. There was not much motivation for Kenyans to go and register, to the extent that they expect them to register 4 million people. They probably registered only 1 million. If that trend goes on, that positive attitude of yours may be rendered to zero.
Mutege, these things cost. It costs to do a mass voter registration around the country. It costs to do mass civic education around the country.
Expensive.
It's expensive. So why isn't IBC being given the funds they need?
That's what I'm saying. When you say things are being done, maybe in private, we didn't see that happening. We are going to have another registration match early next year.
Yes.
You know, the last elections, the major problem was the acquisition of equipment, the corruption involved in it, and the last-minute procurement. I have heard Ezra Chiruba saying they are going to buy voter registration, all the equipment, new ones. And they're complaining about money for civic education, money for registration. Are we not going to have another situation where next year the elections are going to be in August? No procurement, no civic education, the registration March, maybe, then voting, then the budget. I'm not seeing that positivity.
I think on the previous point, these processes do cost. The IBC has made its presentation and its speech in the past to Parliament about what they need. Parliament, in its wisdom, I guess, considering all the other budgetary issues it has to deal with, did not give IBC the amount that it needed at that time. And I think the IBC can only then go ahead and carry out a process within their budget. But yes, we do have the timelines that are ahead of us. Another mass voter registration in a year's time. I think that is sufficient time for the country. And I think the president made a pronouncement on that, and he came out and said that they will support a proper voter registration process. If he had done that just before, I think that would have been good. But I guess now that he has said it, again, we should ensure that that is done and implemented for the next mass voter registration process. And not just that, the continuous voter registration process needs to be brought out even more clearly, so that we don't all wait for February next year, but Kenyans can continue doing their registration. And I think there is still time to shift around budgets, even while we have a very tight national budget and a lot of wastage, in my view, that it is taking place. If we saved a bit on what we waste in our national budgets, I think we could plug in some to IBC.
What do you say to the fact that going back to that prayer meeting in Afra Stadium, only one section of religious leaders were there, the mainline ones, the Catholics, the Protestants, Anglicans, PCs and all this, they were not there. Why do you think that happened? No, but of course you saw with some Muslims.
Yeah.
Does that water down the prayer, or what does it make of it?
I think I did note that they were not there, though I couldn't tell. You know, these days everyone wears a purple shirt and a collar.
Somebody more pointed to me that Bishop Korir, the one who has been dealing, he's from Eldoret. From Eldoret, yeah. The one who has been dealing with the NDPs. He was not there. No Catholic priest or bishop was there.
Yeah, I wouldn't know why, if there was no mainstream clergy, I wouldn't know why they're not there. Were they invited? Probably would be the first question to ask. And if they were and they didn't turn up, why did they snub it? I wouldn't be so sure why they did. I think the rally, many people had certain views about the rally, and I don't know if the clerics shared some of the views about probably going slow on the rally, but I wouldn't be sure. If it would be good to find out if they were invited, and if they were, why they opted out of the rally.
Somebody is saying that politics is the radicalization of religion. The two divines of the political industry in Kenya, they seem to have acquired, and each of them convinced the post-election violence victims to go and sing their song. That's the only way you can define what was witnessed in Nakuru and in Kibera during the weekend. Victims of the same misfortune playing different tunes.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier, that both sides paraded victims. Some who say they were compensated, some who say they have not been adequately compensated. It's really sad when we reach the point where we also just bring out victims to political rallies to parade them to display some of these things. I just hope that from today, after these rallies after the dust has settled down, that something seriously will be done to completely and adequately deal and compensate all the victims.
During that rally in Nakuru, hardly did we hear, there were a lot of expectation that Raila would be the topic, but hardly was it mentioned. What do you say to that?
Like I said earlier, I think this was a brief that must have been given after the discourse that was taking place in the whole in the country and on social media. It was quite evident the week or the run-up to the rally what Kenyans were saying, and if I was advising the Jubilee politicians, I would have told them that look, the pulse of the country is that you seem to be celebrating, yet we have an incomplete task with regard to our victims. And two, you already had a lot of, I don't know if you saw on social media, there was a lot of propaganda about that the rally will focus on Raila. So I think I like how the posturing was done, and they all came out and just preached peace, talked about no more blood being shed in contests, talked about supporting victims. It was definitely, in my view, a response to the pulse of the country. by these politicians.
Yesterday, the deputy president was asking those people who were parading victims in Kibera, instead of parading them there, they should have taken them for composition, because the government is compositive. What do you say to that?
I didn't see that, but I guess what the DP is saying is that there has been a process to settle and compensate victims. That process, I think, has been questioned by even sections of civil society with regard to how transparent it has been. I think some reports have been done in the past that have shown a bit of challenges with regard to the funds that have been used. But if those mechanisms are still in place, they should be publicized afresh, and we should see a deliberate effort being done to complete, because yes, there has been compensation of victims taking place. To complete the process, I think that will speak volumes towards the healing in this country.
Thank you very much, Osodo. Osedo. And I hope both parties have heard you, and we expect this country is going to be having elections in peace next year.